Hey there. Ever feel like your code could use a little spring cleaning? Like maybe it works, but it's not exactly pretty.
Yeah, we've all been there.
Well, today we're going to dive into something called refactoring. And get this, it's not about writing new code. It's about taking the code you already have and, well, making it better. Especially for someone like you aiming for those top tech companies.
Exactly. Think of it like you're renovating a house, right? You're not changing how the house looks from the outside, but you're improving everything inside. The structure, the plumbing, the wiring,
Mm-hmm.
all that good stuff behind the scenes.
Okay, so we're making the code itself better, not just adding new features.
Right. It's about improving what's already there.
Got it. I have to admit, I do love adding those new bells and whistles sometimes and forget about the, what did you call it? The foundation.
Yeah, it's a common trap. But here's why refactoring matters, especially for someone like you interested in, well, companies at the forefront of technology. A well-refactored code base. It's like that dream house with solid bones. It's easier to debug, it's easier to test, and it's way easier to build upon. Saves everyone time and money in the long run.
That makes sense. Imagine trying to add, like, a super cool new feature to a code base that's just a tangled mess.
Oh, tell me about it. It would be a nightmare to work with.
Okay, I'm starting to see why this matters. It's about building for the future, not just for right now. But what does refactoring actually look like? Like, in practice, what do you actually do?
So let's say you've got this long chunk of code, right? And it's doing a bunch of different things all at once. Kind of clunky.
Like a tool that's trying to be a hammer, a screwdriver, and a wrench all at the same time.
Exactly. Refactoring helps you break that down into smaller, more specialized tools, each one with a clear purpose.
So it's like organizing the tools in a toolbox. So everything has its own place and it's easier to find what you need. Got any examples of those specialized tools in action?
Absolutely. One common technique is called extract method. Imagine you've got this big, messy method. Let's call it printoing.
Catchy.
And it's handling two things, printing a banner and then also printing the customer details.
Sounds like a recipe for confusion.
Exactly. With extract method, you take that customer details part and you put it into its own separate method. You could call it something much clearer, like print details.
Okay, so instead of one overstuffed method, you have two that are much easier to understand and manage.
Exactly.
And probably less intimidating to look at, too.
You got it.
And I bet it's super helpful when you're collaborating with other people on a project.
You hit the nail on the head. When you refactor your code, you're not just making it cleaner for yourself, you're making it cleaner for your teammates, and even your future self who might have to revisit that code months, even years down the line.
It's like leaving a trail of breadcrumbs so you don't get lost in the code forest. Speaking of making things easier, are there other refactoring techniques that help with that? So besides this extract method thing, what other refactoring tricks do developers use to keep their code, squeaky clean? Asking for a friend, of course.
Right, right. Well, there's rename method, which is exactly what it sounds like. Imagine you come across a method named calc total.
Calc total. Okay.
Yeah, you'd probably be thinking, total what? Not very helpful.
Not at all.
So with rename method, you change that vague name to something super clear, like calculate total price. No more head scratching.
Makes sense. It's like labeling your storage boxes clearly so you don't waste time searching for Christmas decorations in Jai.
Exactly.
So these refactoring techniques, they're all about creating order and clarity, right? Like, is there a philosophy behind this, or is it just about making the code look pretty?
Oh, there's definitely a philosophy. There are best practices in software development that, yeah, they apply to code, but honestly, they can teach us a lot about good old-fashioned problem solving. A skill those top tech companies definitely look for.
Now, that's what I'm talking about. Tell me more.
Well, there's this thing called the Boy Scout rule, which basically means you always leave the code better than you found it.
I like that.
Even if it's just a tiny improvement.
Yeah.
It might not seem like much in the moment, but these little changes, they add up over time, making a big difference in the long run.
It's about taking responsibility, right? Like, not just for your little part of the project, but for the overall health of the code.
Precisely. It's like being a good citizen in the coding world. Another important practice is making small, incremental changes and testing frequently. Don't try to refactor everything at once.
That sounds overwhelming.
Yeah, it's a recipe for disaster. Baby steps, just like with any big project.
Baby steps. Got it.
Now, speaking of big projects and, your career aspirations, remember those top tech companies you're aiming for.
Always.
Companies like Google, Amazon, Facebook.
Oh.
They're not just looking for someone who can write code. They're looking for developers who understand how to write maintainable, high-quality code that can, well, stand the test of time.
And that's where refactoring comes in.
Exactly.
So it's like a secret handshake almost, like saying, I'm not just a coder, I'm a craftsman. A craftswoman even, of code.
Huh. I like that. It shows you're a problem solver, that you care about code quality, that you're thinking about the long-term implications of the code you write.
Yeah.
These are all incredibly valuable skills, especially in those fast-paced, innovative environments.
It's about building software that not only works, but works well and continues to work as new features get added as the company grows. It's about seeing the bigger picture, not just the immediate task.
Absolutely. And here's something else to consider. While the principles of refactoring are universal, the specific techniques and approaches, they can vary a bit depending on the style of programming you're using.
Oh, interesting.
Whether it's object-oriented, functional, or procedural, each one has its own little nuances when it comes to refactoring.
So it's not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing. It's more like tailoring your approach to whatever project you're working on.
A very apt analogy. But regardless of the style, the core goal remains the same: to improve the quality of the code and how easy it is to maintain. And that brings us to a concept we hear a lot about in software development: technical debt.
Oh, yeah, technical debt. Sounds kind of intimidating, like something you don't want to mess with.
It can be if it's not managed properly. See, technical debt is essentially the cost of taking shortcuts, making quick fixes in the code that seem expedient in the short term,
Right.
but can come back to haunt you later on.
So those quick fixes are like putting off paying your credit card bill.
Exactly.
It feels good now, but that interest can really add up.
That's a great way to put it. And just like with financial debt, technical debt can accumulate and really cripple a project if it's not addressed.
Yikes.
This can lead to slower development times, increased costs,
No, yeah.
even project failures.
Okay, that sounds pretty scary. So where does refactoring fit into all of this? Is it like the solution to this technical debt problem? So refactoring is like what? Making those regular payments on your technical credit card, keeping that debt from getting out of control?
Exactly. You're continuously improving that code,
Yeah.
addressing those quick and dirty solutions you made earlier. You're essentially paying down that debt and preventing a major headache down the road.
Which is exactly what those top tech companies want to see. Developers who are proactive, thinking about the long-term health of their code, right?
Absolutely. Now, you might be thinking, is refactoring just about making things faster? And the answer is not necessarily.
Oh, I thought that was the whole point of refactoring, to make the code run like a well-oiled machine.
Well, refactoring can lead to performance improvements, but that's usually a side effect, not the main goal. Think of it this way. Imagine you're trying to find a specific book,
Okay,
but the library is a mess, totally disorganized.
been there.
Refactoring is like taking the time to categorize those books, organize everything. It might not make the library bigger,
Right.
but it sure makes it easier to find what you're looking for.
So it's about clarity first, making the code easier to understand, easier to navigate, and then that can lead to more efficient code down the line.
Exactly. And speaking of clarity, it's interesting to note how refactoring plays a key role in agile development,
Agile, right?
which is all about adapting to change quickly and delivering value in those small incremental chunks.
Right. I've heard agile is all the rage these days, especially those big tech companies we keep talking about.
Yeah, and for good reason. Agile teams often practice continuous refactoring. They're always making small improvements to the code base with each iteration. Think of it like tending a garden. You don't wait for everything to become overgrown before you start weeding and pruning.
Right.
You do a little bit at a time,
Yeah.
consistently, to keep things healthy and manageable.
So refactoring isn't a one-time thing. It's an ongoing process. It's like a mindset of constantly wanting to improve.
Absolutely. And honestly, that's a valuable lesson. Whether you're writing code, building a company, or even just tackling a personal project, it's about building that solid foundation,
Yeah.
one small improvement at a time, and setting yourself up for success in the long run.
It seems like refactoring is more than just techniques and tools. It's a philosophy
I'd agree with that.
of building better software, and maybe even a better way of approaching problems in general.
Well said. And for you, our listener, always learning, seeking those aha moments, I hope this deep dive has shown you just how important refactoring is, not just for amazing software, but also for developing that problem-solving mindset that can really boost your career, especially when you're aiming for those top tech companies.
It's like we always say, the best code isn't just code that works, it's code that lasts. code that's easy to understand, code that can evolve. And if we can apply those same principles to how we work, how we solve problems, well, who knows what we can achieve. Until next time.